morning, dear students. My name is Dr. Shuaib Mohammad Bhat. I am working as Assistant Professor in the Department of English at Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. Today in this video lecture, I shall be discussing a question bank on communication skill and listening skill. So, if you see in your syllabus, the first module of your syllabus, that is about communication skill and listening skill. So today I shall be just discussing this question bank on communication skill and listening skill. That means on our first module. When we talk about the question bank, or when we talk about the type of questions which are coming or which will come, which you will have to face in your examination. So the questions are of three types. The first type is problem solving and critical thinking questions. So in the first category, among these three different types of categories to which the questions belong and from which the questions are coming for your examination, we have the first one, that is problem solving and critical thinking questions. What is this problem solving and critical thinking questions? We discussed it earlier when I discussed the question bank in the offline class to you. So today here we shall be discussing certain questions which belong to problem solving and critical thinking. So the first question here I would like to discuss is key elements of the communication process and how do they contribute to effective communication. When we talk about the first module, as I told you, there we have the communication skill. When we talk about communication skill, there are different subtopics which are there in your module 1. Like we have what's communication skill. We have different forms of communication which includes verbal and non-verbal communication. We have communication process, like communication elements are there, elements required for communication process. So this question is based on your syllabus and it has been extracted from module number 1. The question is based on communication process. Let's talk about the question. See, we need to write the answer which shows that you have the critical thinking and you have the capability of problem solving. You know how to solve a problem and you have the, as I told you, you have the ability of critical thinking. So the answer is like this. The communication process, it involves several key elements that collectively contribute to effective communication. As I told you earlier, and I am repeating the same thing, communication is not like, it's not incidental or it's not accidental. It's not anything which happens by its own. There is a process. I would like to give an example of the food which we eat. So there is a big process. First we collect the grains or we collect different things, then we cook them. Then we eat, then there is the process like we chew it, it goes to our stomach through different phases, then it is being digested, then certain nutrients, fats and other things, they are being extracted for other functions. So there is a process. This eating and digesting, it's a process, it's the name of a process which we call as digestion. So the number of these organs are involved in it. It's not like something which happened randomly. No, it's not that. Same is the case with communication. Communication is not like you are speaking because only your mouth has the function to speak. It's not that thing. There's a process, a well-structured process, a well-organized process, well-structured process is there. According to that process, the communication happens. It follows that process. In that process, we have the first element. There are certain elements. Number one is sender. What is sender? Sender initiates the communication by encoding a message which can be verbal or non-verbal or written. So the first element which we require for the communication process is sender. It is sender who encodes the message. It is sender who initiates the message. It is sender who starts the message. So we have a sender. The sender starts the message. Sender initiates the message. So the sender is there. The first element for every communication is sender. And the sender is encoding the message. Encoding we shall be discussing in the upcoming slide. It is sender who encodes the message. This message, it can be verbal or non-verbal. It can be a spoken communication or it can be a written communication. And it can be a communication which goes through non-verbal communication like body postures, body gestures. Then the second thing is that is message. So the information, idea or emotion that the sender wishes to convey to the recipient. Message is the content. Any idea, any emotion, it can be any feeling. Means the thing which you want to convey to the receiver is called a message. It can be any idea, it can be any information, it can be an emotion, it can be a feeling. So the thing or the stuff which your sender is conveying to the receiver is called as message. Then the next point is channel. The medium through which the message is transmitted, such as face-to-face conversation, email, phone call, or written document. Channel is any medium through which we are sending the message, through which we are transmitting the message. It can be a face-to-face conversation. It can be a conversation with the help of email writing. It can be a conversation which happens over a phone call, or it can be a written document. So this is what we mean by the channel. Then encoding. What is encoding in communication process? It is the process of converting the sender's thoughts and ideas into a form that can be understood by the recipient. This may involve choosing words, gestures or symbols. Encoding is one of the crucial steps when you are having any communication. Encoding requires to keep the decoder in the mind, to keep your audience in your mind, to keep your receiver in your mind. So when you are encoding a message, you need to use that language which can be easily understood by your receiver. You need to use that vocabulary which can be easily assessed or understood by your receiver. If you are using non-verbal mode of communication, you can include only those gestures, those postures in your communication which can be easily understood by your receiver. Because every communication has the goal and motive of every communication is to be understood by both the parties. To understood and understand. As right now we are having a communication, I am transmitting this message, this information to you. So my goal is to be understood by you people. And I have another goal, that is I should understand you as well. Because when I understand you, then only I can answer your queries, your questions. What I want to tell you is encoding means to keep your receiver in your mind when you are encoding a message. Encoding can be done on the basis of language. Which language you are choosing, which style you are choosing, which words you are choosing, which body gestures you are choosing. So which content you are choosing, which different examples and illustrations you have included in your conversation. That's encoding. Then decoding. Decoding is the process by which the recipient or the receiver interprets and understands the message. It is influenced by the recipient's experiences, knowledge, and cultural background. Decoding is that process in which the receiver now interprets the message. Now a receiver can interpret the message on the basis of his knowledge, experience, and cultural background. So when you are decoding a message, it's always important you need to keep receiver in your mind. What is the cultural background of receiver? What is the mother tongue of receiver? What is the IQ level of your receiver? Which style he or she is using for drafting a message? So while keeping all these things on board, while keeping all these things in your mind in consideration, you can then only be able to decode a message properly. Then a receiver. Who is a receiver? It is a person or audience or persons for whom the message is intended. These are the people for whom the message is intended, or this is the person who receives the message. Then one of the important points which I want to discuss with you, which I feel or which I felt is most important, that is feedback. The response or the reaction provided by the receiver indicating whether the message was understood as intended. Feedback is crucial for confirming comprehension and adjusting communication if needed. So it is the response given by the receiver which indicates whether the communication was understood as intended, as expected or not. And this feedback is very important for the comprehension. By receiving a feedback, a sender knows or identifies his strong or weak points. A sender comes to know whether his or her information has been understood by the receiver as expected or as intended or not. Now when you are sending the feedback, it is again the process of communication happens. When you send the feedback, you are becoming the sender of the message. You will require a channel. You will require to encode the message, and your receiver now, earlier the person who was sender, will become the receiver. So again, it is a cycle of communication. It goes on. Then the next is noise. It is any interference or distortion that may affect the clarity of message during the communication process. It can be external like background noise, or it can be internal like preconceived notion. I would like to give it a name like barrier. It's an obstacle. Noise is any interference which occurs there in communication process. I am right now talking to you, there is no interruption, no disturbance. But unfortunately, if someone from some back side or front side or somebody comes from any side and starts shouting here, that would be called as interference. That's noise, external noise. And this noise or this obstacle, it can be internal obstacle. That is preconceived notion, preconceived idea, preconceived feeling. For example, right, I am your sender. Right now, I am sending messages. Someone among you, if he or she thinks, sir is not an intelligent person, sir is not a good teacher, he cannot teach us good. So this is an internal noise. This is an internal obstacle. It is a preconceived notion. This preconceived notion will not allow you to listen me carefully. I may be speaking something which is very good and which is beneficial for you, but you will not understand that. Why? Because you are the victim of that preconceived notion that sir is not capable. This is internal noise, which is preconceived notion. Context. The situational factors, including the environment, cultural norms, social cues that influence the interpretation of the message. The situational factors, context is all about the situational factors, which includes environment, cultural norms, social cues, and it influences the interpretation of the message. This context, as I told you, these are situational factors like the environment in which I am talking to you, in which I am delivering my lecture. It will influence the interpretation of message. Cultural norms, there are certain cultural norms. They are guiding you to interpret a text or interpret a message. There are certain social cues, social signals, which are also guiding you sometimes in order to interpret a message. This is called a context. Then, effective communication, it occurs when the sender encodes a message clearly, the chosen channel is appropriate, the message is transmitted without significant noise, the receiver accurately decodes and understands the intended meaning, feedback helps in refining communication, ensuring a shared understanding between the sender and the receiver. Now, if I summarize this question, this process of communication, I can tell you this effective communication, it occurs when the sender encodes a message clearly. Encoding should be clear, channel should be appropriate, message should be transmitted without noise, without any interruption. Receiver should accurately decode the message and understand the intended meaning. Feedback, it helps in refining communication, and it ensures a shared understanding between the sender and the receiver. This is about the process of communication. Then, the next is, as I told you, the chapter is about communication skill and listening skill. What do you know about active listener and superficial listener? What is the distinction between active and superficial listener? See, I have just grouped, or I have just highlighted certain elements which are there in listening, which come in the listening for both active and superficial listeners. If we talk about level of engagement, active listeners, they actively engage with the speaker, demonstrating genuine interest in the conversation. They make a conscious effort to understand the message and ask questions for clarification. If we talk about active listeners, we see they are having an active engagement with the speaker. They demonstrate genuine interest. They are showing real interest while listening any talk, any discourse, any dialogue. So they make a conscious effort to understand things. So they are making deliberate efforts to understand anything. Right now I am speaking to you, you all are listening to me. Now the people among you who are active here, who are using their efforts, deliberate efforts to understand me, they are called as active listeners. And they ask questions. Active listeners always ask questions for clarification. Why? Because they are trying to understand the whole content of the speaker. So when they feel they are having any confusion, or when they feel they are not able to understand any point, they simply ask questions. I'd like to share an example. During a team meeting, an active listener might nod, maintain eye contact, follow up the thoughtful questions about the discussed project details. In a meeting, you will see there are people who nod their head like this and like this when they are indicating yes or no. They are making positive eye contact. They remain spellbound to the speaker, and they ask the questions at the end or in the middle of the meeting, thoughtful questions about the project details, about the topic which they are discussing. This is what an active listener can do. He is having a positive level of engagement. Now, superficial listener. Superficial listener passively hears the words but may not invest mental effort in understanding the text. They may appear distracted or disinterested during a conversation. Passive listeners, they only hear, they do not listen. There is a vast difference between hearing and listening. I taught you in the previous classes. So, they only hear, they do not listen. There is no deliberate effort to understand the speaker. They are not investing any energy or any effort to understand. So, it seems as if they are less interested and they are more distracted during the whole conversation. Example, in a classroom setting, a superficial listener might be physically present but mentally preoccupied with some unrelated thought and not absorbing the lecture content. Now, in a classroom setting, when a teacher is teaching, a passive listener is physically present there, but mentally he or she is wandering in some other world, in the utopian world. He or she is preoccupied with some other thought. He or she is absorbed. He or she is absorbed with some other thought, but not absorbed with the lecture. Then, non-verbal cues. What is the role of active listeners for non-verbal cues? So use positive non-verbal cues such as nodding, maintaining eye contact, displaying open body language. An active listener shows positive these non-verbal cues. He maintains eye contact, she maintains eye contact, or positive listeners, they maintain eye contact, they nod their head. They are showing different these physical features, non-verbal gestures, by which they are making themselves connected with the speaker. And it is because of these cues by which these active listeners, they show their attentiveness and encourage the speaker to continue sharing. By these these non-verbal cues, they are showing their attentiveness, and at the same time they are encouraging the speaker to speak more. Example: a manager actively listens to an employee's concerns, providing encouraging gestures and verbal affirmations to convey understanding. When a manager is listening to his or her subordinate or to any employee, if his response is backed and supported by the body language, so it seems the boss is good, he or she listens properly. Now, what is the role of superficial listener when it comes to non-verbal cues? Display non-verbal cues that suggest disinterest or distraction. They are not active. They show these non-verbal cues as if they are distracted, they are absent, mentally absent. They're not having eye contact. They're always fidgeting, moving their hands from one place to another place, sometimes in the pocket, sometimes they are just itching, or they are doing some other work. They're checking their phones during a conversation. Then, during a meeting, the example is a superficial listener during a meeting may glance at his or her watch frequently or scroll through their phone, signaling a lack of engagement. This is what superficial people are doing, listeners are doing. They're all the time looking up on the watch. When will the bell ring and we will leave the show? All the time busy with the cell phones. So it's giving a signal that there is lack of engagement. Response and feedback. So active listeners, they provide meaningful responses and feedback, which demonstrates comprehension of the message. They may paraphrase, ask questions, or offer relevant comments to show they are actively processing the information. Active listeners, they always provide positive feedback and meaningful feedback because they listen everything carefully, and this feedback is very important for the comprehension. And this feedback is important for the speaker because the speaker comes to know, identifies his weak and strong zones. A speaker comes to know what are the other things which he must or he should include in the upcoming lectures, in the upcoming talks, in the upcoming speech. Examples are, when discussing a project, an active listener might respond with. When we are discussing a project, an active listener, he or she responds like, I understand your concerns about the timeline. What solutions do you propose? And how will we address these issues together? As I told you, active listeners, they are providing positive feedback. They ask a question. They ask for clarifications. Then superficial listeners, they offer minimal or generic responses that may not reflect a deep understanding. Generic responses, surface responses, normal, trivial reference responses. These responses, they speak that the person has not understood well. He has not deeply understood the concept. He has not deeply heard or listened to the speaker. And their replies may be vague or unrelated to the topic. Unrelated. Their replies are vague. They are unrelated to the topic. Like in a conversation about a new initiative, a superficial listener might respond with a generic comment like, "Yay, sounds interesting." When you are having a superficial listener, when you are discussing anything good, he or she never offers any suggestion. Why? Because they are not listening actively. What can they offer? He or she is not criticizing your idea. Why? Because he or she is not listening carefully. They can only say yes. Sounds great. They are only like just nodding their head. Then, retention of information. What is the role of active listener when it comes to retention of information? Active listeners, they retain and remember key details from the conversation due to their focused and intentional listening. If you are an active listener, one of the important point is this for the student community. You can because you see everybody needs to just retain the information. Whatever we are listening, it's better to retain it, because there are a lot of the discourses we listen. They are containing good lessons, good morals, good things which we can extract and which we can keep with us and which we can practice in our life. So this retention is important. So retention can be done by active listeners. If you listen me carefully, there are chances you can retain this lecture for longer period of time. So this can be done only by the intentional listeners or active listeners. They can retain information because they are doing focused listening to the speaker, and they are more likely to recall information accurately. The active listener can narrate this lecture tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and even after 10 days. But a passive listener is at the mercy of God. After a training session, an example I would like to share. After a training session, an active listener can articulate the main takeaways and discuss how the new knowledge can be applied to their work. If there is any training session going on, it's active listener who can at the end articulate on the takeaways, summarize all the takeaways which can be applicable for the work which he is working. Superficial listeners, they have difficulty in retaining the information. Why? Because they are not investing mental energy while listening. So obviously, surface listeners or superficial listeners, they cannot retain the information because they are not investing their efforts in listening or understanding the content. There are chances these superficial listeners, they may not retain the information. Like a superficial listener may struggle to recall important instructions given during a team briefing. If there is any briefing given by any person to any group of the people, superficial listeners, they always struggle to remember all these instructions which were given by a team leader or by any person to a team. And it leads to potential mistakes or oversights in their task. It leads them to the mistakes and oversights in their task. I would like to conclude this distinction between active and passive listener like this. Active listeners engage wholeheartedly in conversations. They demonstrate genuine interest and understanding, while superficial listeners may exhibit disinterest and they struggle to retain the information, or they struggle to comprehend the information being communicated. Now the second part in your question bank is about long answer questions. There are long answer questions also in your examination that falls in the second part. First question is, what are soft skills and hard skills and why do they hold significance for students pursuing engineering? What are soft skills? What are hard skills? And why do they hold significance? Why are they so significant for students who are pursuing engineering? Let's see. Soft skills refer to a set of interpersonal communication and personal attributes that enhance an individual's ability to work effectively with others. Soft skills is a set of interpersonal communication and personal attributes. Interpersonal attributes. Attributes which you require in order to communicate with a group of people. With people. Communication attributes and personal attributes. It enhances to work effectively with others. And these skills are often intangible and are not specific to a particular job or industry. They are intangible. You cannot see soft skills. You cannot just touch them. You cannot carry them physically. They are always with you. So they are intangible and they are not specific to a particular job only or industry. Examples of soft skills include communication. Communication is an example of soft skill. Adaptability, how good you are at adapting yourself with the people. Problem solving, do you have the capability of problem solving? Time management, stress management, and emotional intelligence. Soft skill cannot be learned in any institution. There is not any course for soft skills. It can be learned by a person through his behavior, through his experience. So soft skills are crucial for building positive relationships, collaborating in terms and navigating the social aspects of, or I can tell you simply, your hard skills can get you a job. For example, you have a degree, that's your hard skill. You have any skill, you know how to type, you know typing, you know programming, you know photography, you know videography. These are hard skills. These are the skills which can be learned in any institution. On the other hand, soft skills are the skills which cannot be learned in any institution. They can be learned by your experience. It is the refinement in your communication. It's your adaptability. It's your time management. It includes your etiquettes, your good behavior, your manner, time management, stress management. So these things cannot be learned. They come to you by your experience. It's rightly said that by someone that your hard skills can give you a job, can make you to enter in a job, but your soft skills will allow you to keep your job for the longer period of time. Because when you communicate well, you will be loud in the company. When you have the proper time management, you will be a blue-eyed person or you will be a good person in the company. When you know the decision making, you have decision making, problem solving ability, you will make progress in your job. This is soft skill for you. Now hard skill, they are specific teachable ability. They are the abilities which can be learnt, which can be taught, or knowledge sets that are typically job related and can be quantified. It can be quantified how many skills you have, how many skills you further require. It can be measured. In the context of engineering, hard skills may include technical proficiency in the context of in the context of engineering, hard skills, it includes technical proficiency. As I told you, if you know programming, that is your hard skill. Mathematics, data analysis, design software, project management, and domain-specific knowledge. This all comes under hard skills. Now, significance for students pursuing engineering. What is the significance of soft skills and hard skills for the students who are pursuing engineering? So, comprehensive skill set. So, students pursuing engineering need soft skills to effectively communicate their ideas, collaborate with the team members, and work on multidisciplinary projects. Students who are pursuing engineering, they need soft skills in order to communicate with the people outside in order to make their stand firm and solid in their own companies or wherever they are working. So engineering students, they need soft skills because it lets them to communicate with the people effectively. The soft skills, they are essential for presenting technical information, negotiating with colleagues or clients. It allows them to present technical information, negotiate with the people, and talk with their colleagues and understand the human and social implications of their work. This can be done by the soft skills. Now, what's hard skills? Engineering students must acquire a solid foundation of hard skills specific to their chosen fields. Why? Like coding, design principles, analytical capabilities. These technical skills, they are fundamental for problem solving. They are important for problem solving and implementing solutions in their respective fields. That's why engineering students, they should acquire these skills well. Now for the employability, what is the role of soft skills and hard skills? Employers in the engineering industry value soft skills as they contribute to a student's overall employability. You know, nowadays, as I told you, your hard skills can get you a job, but your soft skills can help you to keep your job, to have your job for a longer period of time. So it has its role. Soft skills, they have their role for employability. Every employer doesn't only need a mechanical being. No, we need a people who are good engineers, but at the same time, who are good human beings, who know how to talk, who have the capability of time management, problem solving, stress management. So such type of people are needed for the companies. That's why when you are writing resume, there is one thing which every company claims. What are the skills you have? You can write problem solving skill. You should have that. Because company may need a person who can work when any problem arises. Stress management. There may be some sort of stress to you. Sometimes you may not be able to finish the assignment on the time. Your boss will press you. So it's the situation of stress. You should not lose your mental equilibrium. You should not lose your balance. So these are the skills which you require. So soft skills, it helps an engineering student to get a better job. Hard skills, they are also working for the employability. Obviously, your certificate is a hard skill. So that is important when you are applying for a job. Project success becomes possible when you have the soft skills, when you know the collaboration, when you know to follow the leader, when you know to just understand everybody's viewpoint. That's soft skill. So you'll see project success. Your hard skill, all the programs which you know, they're benefiting you in order to finish any project. And there is career advancement because of soft skills and hard skills. So then there are different types of listeners. There are like active listeners are there. I told you active listener is a person who actively engages in the communication, and he or she asks many questions and tries to understand the whole content. Passive listener is a person who receives information without active engagement in the communication process. They never ask questions and they never provide feedback. Then we have empathetic listener. Empathetic is a listener who is focusing on understanding the speaker's emotions only. Critical listener is a listener who evaluates the speaker's message, checks its validity and credibility. Sympathetic listeners, they show compassion and concern for the speaker's well-being. Selective listeners are those listeners who listen only the specific portion of your talk. Information listeners, they seek to gain knowledge and gather information from the speaker. Then passive listener, I talked this. And now we have, sorry, I'm just going with other slides. Okay. Now we have the next part, that is short answer questions. In the first short answer question, I would love to just talk about listening versus hearing. So for the first short answer question, I'll be just deliberating on listening versus hearing. Hearing is a psychological process of perceiving sounds through the ears. Hearing is passive, it's involuntarily act. Hearing means when sound is reaching to your ears, but you are not investing any effort to understand it. That is hearing. Listening is an active process. In the listening, you are intentionally using every organ which is requiring for understanding any talk. So in listening is a deliberate, is an active process. It's an intentional process where you are hearing the sounds, then you are transferring these sounds to your nerve system, to the brain, then your brain is interpreting the meaning from those sounds. That is listening. There are three components of active listening. One is attending. Attending means it includes, it is the component which involves giving full attention to the speaker, to its verbal, non-verbal gestures. Then the second thing is understanding. Whatever you are listening, you should go through the process and you should try to understand that information. Third one is responding. That is after evaluating the message, after listening the message, we are providing the feedback, we are providing the response to the speaker. Now I would like to sum up the whole, like these components, they work together to create a dynamic and effective communication process. It is all these points They are working together in order to just give birth to a dynamic and effective communication process. By attending to the speaker, understanding the message and responding appropriately, active listeners demonstrate genuine engagement. When you are listening, when you are attending the speaker properly, when you are understanding his or her message properly, when you are responding the speaker appropriately, it shows your active engagement, and at the same time it shows your genuine engagement and contribute to a more productive and meaningful exchange of information. When you are following these 3 steps, it ensures or it contributes to the productive and meaningful exchange of information between speaker and listener. This is all for today. This is all for this discussion, question bank discussion on module 1, which is about communication and listening skill. So if you want some extra information about these questions, you can consult these books. You will get the information. I would like to stop here. Thank you for listening me carefully. Thank you once again.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.